Hi folks, I'm Devok, and welcome to the Artificers Guild, the home of all things Artifact. Along with getting this fantastic game when you buy Artifact, we're also treated to a featured event at launch, with 6 decks for us to play through. So, what is this event, and what's going on?
The Red Mist Horde, led by Sorla Khan, marched towards Stonehall, the capital city of a sprawling empire. Fearing for the safety of the people of Stonehall, Tresden directs her army to occupy the nearby city of Roseleaf in an attempt to ambush the Red Mist. However, her plan to destroy Sorla Khan before the Red Mist ever reaches Stonehall hits a snag when the wolf-esque inhabitants of Roseleaf, the Vul, resist the Bronze Legion's occupation. Soon, dissonance gives way to full-on rebellion as the Vul, Bronze Legion, and Red Mist collide in a violent confrontation. Meanwhile, the Radiant Priestess Prelix assembles an army in preparation for the war she is about to wage against her own daughter, who has abandoned the Radiant and pledged her loyalty to the Dire. The Ancients, the Vul Rebellion, the Bronze Legion, and the Red Mist have made their call to arms. Are you ready to answer it?
As soon as I saw the Call to Arms event screen, I was in love. This is what card games are missing out on. Some sort of epic multiplayer event. I know some card games do them, but I haven't seen one so lovingly themed as this one before. There is just so much freaking lore, tantalizingly close to the surface, not to mention all of the things the lore nerds will be able to figure out from this event. And, moving past the lore to the pure gameplay perspective, this is an event at a launch of a TCG. That statement might not seem crazy, but let me explain. At launch, no one has many cards, so as Valve you hope people buy lots and lots of packs, right? Well, here they've given us 6 free decks to play without having to spend an extra penny. People can jump into the game, play around with this free mode, and then decide where they want to go. It also takes the strain of deck building away from new players and lets them enjoy the game that is Artifact. I couldn't be happier with the event. Actually, that is a small, tiny lie. If I could just ask for one more thing, can we please get a leaderboard for this? I want to know who has the longest streak with each deck, and if for some absurd reason I am up there, I require a signed document of bragging rights from you. Thanks. With that out of the way, let's take a look at some of these decks. First up, we have the deck Ascendance. This is a mono red deck using Centaur, Sven, Legion, Beastmaster and Tide. It has a strong single target control and hits very hard, but it will struggle against wider decks, as you will see in the gameplay footage later on. One key point of the deck is its fantastic initiative control, using both Fight Through the Pain as well as Tidehunter's signature card, Kraken Shell, to force the initiative in your favour. Another strong aspect is its synergy. The cards Heroic Resolve and Rising Anger both buff your unit whenever a low mana cost red card is played, and this deck is absolutely full of them. This does have its disadvantages however. You might find yourself running low on cards as you're able to cast 2 or 3 in a lane each round. And with all of these small cards, the biggest problem you will run into is finishing the game. This deck has no obvious finisher. The closest you'll get is to use Double Edge on an allied hero when they can safely hit a tower, so try to hold onto those cards for that effect. Moving on to the second deck, we have a green-black deck using Lycan, Bounty Hunter, Darkseer, Rix and Lich, called Death and Taxes. It is super strong at manipulating gold, however if you fall behind, its comeback mechanics can come a little too late. The key point of this deck is to get off track kills, isolate the enemy hero, and then when you're sure they will die, apply the track card to them to gain that extra gold. Unfortunately, the item deck here doesn't give you too many exotic win conditions, so you might have to luck out on the secret shop with that. Otherwise, use your crazy high gold to buff up your Revtail convoys. The final combos here revolve around Rix. As he comes back every round, killing him with Braces of Sacrifice or Ravenous Mass isn't a terrible thing at all. However, this will feed gold to your opponent. And on that note, this deck is terrible at coming back into games. With Chainfrost at 7 mana, your only option not to fall behind early on is to luck out on Cheating Death, and honestly, I don't want to rely on that. Our third deck is Green Machine. This is a mono green deck using Lycan, Treant, Darkseer, Drow and Abaddon. It is incredibly beefy and ramps up some crazy damage, but it is very immobile and starts off with weak attack. This deck has the classic advantages of any green deck in draft. It can go very, very wide on the board. This will allow you to abuse any deck that isn't running Area of Effect clear, which is a decent proportion of these decks. If you are careful as to where you place your Mists of Avernus and Cheating Deaths, you'll be able to run away with the game. However, if you get baited into placing your improvements in the wrong spots, or your enemy can kill them off early, you will struggle to compete late game outside of having your Thunderhide packs. So make sure you're absolutely certain which lanes you can fight in. Our fourth deck is Out of Control. This is a blue-red deck using Luna, Axe, Centaur, Ogre Magi, and of all things a frickin' Meepo. This deck is super strong in the control sphere, creating space for its units, however it does force you to use Meepo. As with any Ogre deck, try and make sure you're using him to cast your big value spells like Dimensional Portal, just in case you get the multicast. If you're a masochist, you can even use Ogre Magi to cast Divided We Stand, so you can summon unlimited Meepos. But seriously, don't do that. The general win condition here is to clear out a board so you can make use to Red Mist Pillagers, or stall until you can get Time of Triumph out. The biggest issue is, despite being a control deck, it lacks Annihilation, Conflag, and Thunderstorm, so killing very wide boards of creeps will actually be quite difficult, unless you're able to multicast those Dimensional Portals. Our fifth deck, and my personal favourite, is Trench Warfare. This is a red-green deck using Viper, Bristleback, Ursa, Magnus, and Timbersaw. This is easily my favourite of the decks, and you'll see exactly how strong it is later in the gameplay footage. If it had a weakness, other than me controlling it a lot of the time, I'd say it lacks the ability to consistently clear wide boards, outside of just cleave. This deck is super similar to one I loved running in the closed beta, where you could remove enemies' stats. Make sure to abuse Ursa and Viper's abilities, as they permanently debuff your opponent. Giving Ursa cleave spreads his debuff, and putting Viper in a lane with Grand Melee will help spread his debuff too. Then, with your enemies weakened, you can bounce back from the brink with Roseleaf Rejuvenator and Time of Triumph. Just make sure against wider decks to use your cleave wisely. You will need to keep them in check until you can get your Time of Triumph Siege online. Our final deck is Deck 6, the Upkeep Killer. This is a blue-black deck using Venomancer, Necro, Zeus, Ogre Magi, and Tinker. It has been perfectly designed to focus around the upkeep kills Richard Garfield spoke about in one of his recent videos, killing an enemy before the action phase, so they effectively miss out on 2 rounds instead of just 1. To pull this off, you want to bring the enemy hero low, and then have enough damage that triggers before the action phase to finish them off. This deck can do it with Ignite, Venomancer Wards, Heartstopper Aurora, Conflag, and March of the Machines, so plenty to choose from. Unfortunately, this deck has one big disadvantage though. It is a meme. The rest of the cards that filling out this deck either help towards killing those heroes, or do tiny amounts of damage to the tower before the action phase. But that damage is so low, and so is that of your heroes, that unless you're pulling off perfect upkeep kills constantly, this deck will struggle to kill the enemy towers. So you can make your own decisions as to which your favourite deck is. I obviously have my winner, but I have had some success with all of them, bar the last one, which I just can't seem to win with. Overall, I am loving the event, and despite having all the fancy UI now updated and being able to play in the ticketed modes and set up tournaments, I've found myself playing this event most of the time since it was released. So, without further ado, let's take a look at one of the harder fought games of the Call to Arms event that I have played. So, in this game, I'm going up against a mono red deck, played by someone called Gothic Inside. I've actually lost a couple of games to this guy. He was running the mono green deck at that point. So here we have the deployment, and this early deployment hasn't really favoured me as much as I'd hoped. I would have liked to have Bristleback hitting something a bit less tanky, and Ursa actually hitting something would have been nice as well. But at least my Viper is being hit here. You see there I used Unearthed Secrets. It was actually a bit of a mistake. I used Unearthed Secrets in the final lane because it was going to trigger this turn, whereas I should have seen that I was losing both creeps in this lane. So if I dropped Unearthed Secrets, I know that there are at least 3 units in this lane, 2 of which are hitting tower next turn. So I would have guaranteed to draw more cards, and then probably more in the future. So here I'm just waiting for my opponent to pass, and we can continue. You can see there, now that Sven has lost 1 attack, he actually isn't killing Viper anymore. So Viper is actually a lot tankier than he looks. So here's that Heroic Resolve card I was talking about with the mono red deck. This is going to make Centaur Warrunner almost unkillable. And you'll see that Centaur Warrunner and Bristleback fight constantly. And I think eventually maybe Centaur Warrunner dies, but it's not for a very, very long time. So notice he's basically taking no damage, and Bristleback, he's taking quite a bit, but I keep him up somehow. Here in this lane, I think I drop an early Grand Melee so that I can get Ursa's damage. Oh, I didn't. Not sure why I didn't do that. I would have liked to drop an early Grand Melee, because then Ursa's cleave damage would have hit Legion Commander. And even if Ursa's cleaving, his passive, which removes 1 armor when he attacks someone, would still trigger. So that would have been a nice play by me. I think I definitely do it this turn. Deployment-wise, I'm looking at the first lane and I'm abandoning it at this point. So I put Magnus in the middle lane because Bristleback is struggling. And in the final lane, I'm happy with my Ursa just beating on that Legion Commander. And I kind of want them to be able to hit my tower anyway. Now Viper here is being an absolute hero and he's tanking a lot of damage. I think in return I decide to trade and I just empower, especially now I see this, Rising Anger. So he's only got 2 mana left. The chance of him being able to stop this damage coming through now is slim. And even if he does, I'm still going to clear out those creeps. So this is massive for me. This is me clearing out a lane effectively. He does then use this opportunity to use Double Edge, and this is what I was talking about with this red deck. This is how you finish with this red deck. You need to make sure you're getting those double edge hits on the tower. So moving into this lane, I think I Whirling Death here to make sure that my Bristleback isn't going to be dying. At least I think that's what I do, unless I pass. No, because Bristleback would die. So now Bristleback's perfectly healthy, and I don't think they have any way of making sure I die this turn, but they can definitely buff up Centaur. Ah, yes, I remember. So Stonehall Elite, if you don't know, if he kills an enemy, he gets 2 extra attack and 2 extra health. So even after just 1 attack that goes through, so if he killed this creep without me doing anything, he would start to ramp out of control. So I make the decision to just kill him off now. I'm only taking 2 damage from Centaur, because I'm not getting the retaliate damage anymore, and I just need to kill that unit. That unit is incredibly powerful. And now I hope I put my Grand Melee down. It would have been nicer last turn because Legion Commander wasn't cleaving, because she was hitting the enemy tower, or she was hitting my tower. So if a unit's hitting a tower with cleave, it doesn't hit the enemy units. So now my Ursa is going to cleave onto Legion. She sees this and she decides that she doesn't want my Ursa to continually cleave onto her Legion Commander, because then she would eventually get negative armor. So she just duels me. This might have been a miscalculation, assuming that they'd keep the 1 armor, but Ursa's passive works with any type of combat, so Legion Commander dies to the creep anyway. And thanks to my Ursa being dead, I actually get to draw a card, which is really nice. Thank you, Unearthed Secrets. Now I'm forced with the unfortunate option of buying a Barbed Mail. For 6 gold, plus 1 armor and plus 2 retaliate, which is unconfirmed damage basically, isn't necessarily the best thing to go for. But I'm going to go for it anyway, just so I can see what was underneath. And, lo and behold, a Phase Boots, which is perfect. Extra health and mobility. Mobility, which this deck was currently suffering from. So now I can swap, for example, my Bristleback and my Magnus around, should I need to. So I completely ignore this first lane in deployment because I see 2 more enemy creeps spawning there and I don't want a part of that, and I know I can fight his Tidehunter in the final lane with my Timbersaw. So here, I'm just going to see what I get to draw. Smash the Defenses is kind of nice, but this deck doesn't have too many improvements, and Viscous Nasal Goo is actually fantastic. I definitely want to be applying negative armor to these huge tanky units. So this first lane, not too much to say on my end. If he has another double edge, he might be able to use it on his Beastmaster, but he doesn't. So 20 health there, but I'm not too worried because I've got double Roseleaf Rejuvenator, which can both give 7 health back to that tower. So here I'm just going to stall for time effectively. I want to see what he can do with his 3 cards and 5 mana. So I'm going to apply my Mail to Bristleback, and he goes with a Kraken Shell. So now I know I cannot kill him this turn. And then he puts a Burning Boil down. So immediate smash the defenses. When the enemy deck doesn't have many improvements in it, just use smash the defenses on the enemy improvements as soon as you can, because you guarantee that draw and you're removing something that they were maybe playing around. So it's only a 1 mana improvement, but it's still a draw for me, so that worked out quite nicely, and I do love Empower. Empower is so good in this deck. So Bristleback was going to die, so now I equipped the Phase Boots to make sure he doesn't. Not necessarily going to use the effect, just using it for the health here. I want to make sure that Bristleback can fight the Centaur until I can get the extra 2 damage from killing him. So it's just going to be a pass from me, and we clash. Now this final lane, I just want to Viscous Nasal Goo that Tidehunter. Because of the cleave as well, this will give the cleave damage an extra 1 damage, because it's -2 plus 1 is -1. The Tidehunter has -1 life. -1 armor, sorry. So with the cleave damage, I'm dealing 3 cleave damage, whereas he's doing 2 cleave damage. Just picking up a health pot. Health pots are really good, especially in this sort of tanky warfare that's going on here. So now the enemy has a couple of options. They can buff up either the second or third lane. They're handedly winning the first. But I see this first lane and I think, you know what? I can save this. So I put Ursa and Viper both into that first lane. And these are my 2 really annoying units that will debuff your attack and debuff your armor. And see, the enemy fell, or sorry, my opponent, Gothic Inside, fell for the bait and he committed to the other 2 lanes. So now I can swing this lane right around. I have a Rebel Decoy to swap things around. I have a Caught Unprepared. If he didn't have an item in his hand, I would just Caught Unprepared that Beastmaster and he wouldn't be able to do anything. But now I can swap things around as much as I want to because I have my Rebel Decoy. So here I was kind of hoping that I'd be able to get Ursa over here with some cleave, but I don't have enough mana for Empower anymore. So I'm just going to have to swap the Viper and get some regular damage down on Beastmaster there. I've just noticed now that the little button, the initiative button, changed to a sort of enter or back loop when I had that ability active. That's the first time I've seen that. That's a nice addition. I don't know whether that's because I was doing a swapping mechanic or whether that's just what pops up whenever you're in the middle of doing something to let you know that you need to stop doing what you're doing before you can go and pass the turn again. So, now this lane is handedly in my favour. I have 2 heroes against his 1, and I have a Rebel Decoy against his regular creep. This lane, however, is all going to be turned with 1 card. Whirling Death. I love Whirling Death. The enemy uses up all their mana. I say, thanks. Now I don't have to worry a single thing about that. I'm just going to heal up my Bristleback, make sure if I can't bait that item out of him, and if he passes, I'm just going to Whirling Death straight through. That saves my Bristleback and deals enough damage. So he does use the healing salve, but that's all it was. So I could Caught Underprepared here, but I don't necessarily need to. He doesn't have any items, so I might as well just Whirling Death. This will deal 2 damage to both of those units and reduce their attack by 2 for this turn, saving Bristleback and saving that creep on the final side. Now Empowering Bristleback lets me kill his Centaur and deal a decent chunk of damage to that Sven. So that was a fantastic turn for me, and that was just kind of fortunate in that the enemy is running out of responses, and I am just about coming into my swing now. I have survived the incredible early game of this deck, and now it's time for me to come back. So moving into the shop, I've got 10 gold, he's got 5. Remember to always keep a track of your enemy's gold. So I'm going to spend 8 gold here. He knows I've spent 5 and 3. If we had decklists open, he would know exactly what I've bought. So we see he's got 5, and the most he can spend is 4, I guess. Oh no, he can spend 5. I think he might have a 5 gold item in his deck. And we see he did buy 1 3 gold thing. So that's probably a healing salve, but it could be an item as well. I'm not sure if I'm ready to go with Caught Unprepared. Now here is something important to note. I wanted to drop a Roseleaf Rejuvenator in front of that Beastmaster, but I know it's 7 mana, so he has Primal Roar. Now Primal Roar stuns the unit opposite a red hero, and then moves the units either side of that unit to a different lane. Now the reason why it's important that I didn't drop Roseleaf Rejuvenator here is because that Beastmaster cannot roar unless there is a unit opposite him. So by leaving it open, I can guarantee that these units go through this turn, and I'm going to set up for a upkeep kill here actually. At least I believe, yeah, so I drop Burning Oil, dealing an extra 2 damage to Beastmaster this turn, and then I drop a Viper Strike, which would do 2 damage in the next action phase, or before the next action phase. Which would mean he's gone, I can not worry, I don't have to worry about those pesky freaking roars anymore, and I can get on with winning this lane. So upkeep kills are really important to look for, and I think this is one, not many people like Viper, but I really like Viper. Upkeep kills are definitely very, very strong, and just generally his ability is really, really nice. But here we see he plays an extra card to stop it, and now I know he doesn't have the mana to do anything else. So I could, if I wanted to, move my Viper to attack him, and I think that might be what I do with new orders. No, I just pass. I'm keeping initiative for the next lane. I want to make sure I can use Caught Unprepared should I need to. So I could also flip. Nope, I'm just going to straight up caught unprepared. You're out. And now Bristleback is going to be cleaving onto him. Ah, here we go. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I got my Bristleback to kill him. So now I use New Orders. Because it's just a 1 mana card, I can make sure Bristleback's pointing at him. Still cleaves onto the creep. And the reason why I didn't use Phase Boots here is because I want to make sure I can use Phase Boots next turn to move around when his Centaur Warren is coming back. Here, for some reason, he uses Ravage. I'm not entirely sure why. He might have been worried about one of my red cards, but I wouldn't have been able... I mean, I would have been able to kill Tidehunter this turn if I had a Whirling Death, but that's it. I don't think that's worth ravaging for here. But at this point he does realise that I am coming back into the game, and by the next round he's going to realise he is definitely losing. So he has 3 gold, I have 9. Always remember to keep a track of those. I'm just going to buy Salve, I don't want more cleave, I'm perfectly happy with the way the board looks. And his Centaur Warren is going to drop in middle lane. This is something strange as well. For some reason he decides to fight all 3 lanes. I would have liked him to put Centaur in the first lane, assuming that I would just be able to kill his Beastmaster. But he unfortunately doesn't do that. So a bit of a strange move from him. So I've got initiative here, and I'm going to drop my Roseleaf Rejuvenator before I get roared. I know he can roar this turn, but I don't care. The upkeep kill will get him next turn. So I'm just going to drop the Roseleaf Rejuvenator. Feel free to roar away. That just means I get my Roseleaf. That just means I get my Viper and my Rebel Decoy in a different lane, which I'm quite happy about, to be honest. I've now saved this tower with the +7 health I'm getting, and in fact it's going to swing in my favour this turn. So just wait for him to roar. I'm pretty sure he does, if I remember this game rightly. It was a very fun game to play. I do like these games where you have to claw all the way back, tooth and nail, to just even potentially come back into the game. This tower was down to 14 health, and the other one's at 26. So there's the roar, and my decoy goes into the mid lane, and my Viper goes to the right lane, which originally I wasn't particularly happy about. I don't want him all the way over there. But it actually lets me drop another Roseleaf Rejuvenator and heal that tower up even more. So I am now officially winning that first lane. Now I'm just going to make sure I can win this lane. I think... Do I just... Oh no, I stunned last turn. So yeah, I just dropped Time of Triumph. Or do I swap first? No, I swap first to avoid him roaring. If he roared right then, if I'd Time of Triumph and then he'd roared, my Magnus could get abandoned in some random lane. By doing this Phase Boot swap, I A, guarantee that he cannot stun my Bristleback, and I B, know whether or not he's going to roar and move my Magnus, or whether I can go ahead and use Time of Triumph. Incidentally, if he does roar, I should just use Enrage and get the extra 4 damage, which I actually think is what he does. I don't quite recall this turn as well as I should. Also, getting rid of Magnus moves my Rebel Decoy in 1 more, which means I could swap him with Bristleback later on and get cleave damage. Yep, and there's another roar. So that's 2 roars down. And Magnus both of them went into the first lane, which is really quite nice for me, because that's where I want my units, in the first and the middle lane. So I now am doing 15 damage to his 22 health tower. Just going to heal up Bristleback, make sure he doesn't die. I've got another... Stockpiling Salves is never a bad thing, because you can just throw them out at times like this. Like, he's still got 1 mana. There are a bunch of cards in his deck that cost 1 mana, he could do something. So I'm just going to heal my Bristleback, play it safe. I've got another healing salve if I need it, and wait to see if he's going to do anything before I enrage my Bristleback for the extra 4 damage. So I'm just going to go for that. I could have kept the initiative, but honestly, I don't need initiative in the next lane. I'm not too worried. I'm not going to win this lane. I do notice something quite interesting here though. So I see that my Viper is dying, and I don't want him to die because the enemy has 5 gold, and I know that next turn I can win if he doesn't buy some crazy item or get some crazy draw. So I want to stop as many of my heroes from dying as possible. So I know that with a healing salve plus a Stonehall Cloak, my Viper actually easily survives even after this God Strength. So I Roseleaf Rejuvenator first, get the healing down on that tower, and kill the Legion Commander, so I'm getting even more gold myself. That also means Legion Commander is cleaving Viper, So she will proc his ability, losing 1 attack in any following turns. But I don't intend the game to be going on that long. I did sacrifice a draw from Unearthed Secrets, but at this point I had my Time of Triumph in hand, and I was happy that that was going to be my win condition in the first lane. I think it's a double edge that procs me to... yeah. So I see the double edge come through on my Timbersaw. So Timbersaw is well and truly dead. So now I heal up my Viper, and then I can Stonehall Cloak my Viper so that he doesn't die. So the enemy is just getting 10 gold here. Well, actually 11 gold, but... So keeping an eye on that 11 gold. I have 17, but unfortunately all I get is a Barbed Mail. So I buy that, hoping I get something better underneath, but it's another one. So never mind. I can buy a turn by just dropping a Barbed Mail on something. Sven here should drop in the left lane. He should notice that Beastmaster is going to get upkeep killed. That is the only disadvantage to an upkeep kill. If you're delaying a kill for upkeep, also that arrow is hilarious because the Beastmaster's dead. If you're delaying a kill for 1 turn to upkeep, note that you're not getting that 5 gold 1 turn earlier. So it's a bit of a shame. I could have used that 5 gold. I maybe could have bought through the second Barbed Mail and then got something good, but this should be enough. So I think I'm also a bit hesitant as to what he's going to do. He might have a 3rd Roar, which would stun my Roseleaf Rejuvenator and bump Ursa to a random lane. So I'm holding off on the Time of Triumph for now. I do have 2, so I probably could get away with it.
This will help.
But he's baiting time as well. So I go, okay, we're both just waiting to see what each other plays. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play your game. Barbed Mail. And then he drops Treads and Standards. 5 mana, I know you can't brawl me. And you're not in front of me, so you can't Sucker Punch me either. So I'm happy to go with Time of Triumph. The only thing he can do now is drop a creep in my way. He's got Stonehall Elites and Bronze Legionnaires. So he could do either of those. So he fights through the pain to get extra attack on his Sven. Not entirely sure why, because my Ursa has 5 armor now. So that was a bit of a strange play. He got initiative to drop a creep. I'm not entirely sure what was going on there. But I was happy to take it. The tower's at 5 health. And all I need to do is just press the button on my Bristleback with Time of Triumph will kill that tower. And he only has 1 item, so I know he can't do a darn thing about this. I'm perfectly happy just hitting that button. So I have 2 units in the first lane, both of which have siege. That alone, if they just attack, is enough to kill the tower. It's a bit of a shame I couldn't get initiative. When you're going to these closing stages, it is really, really nice to have initiative moving into them. But I just grab a Potion of Knowledge. Demagicking Maul is just a lot nicer than the Barbed Mail. Grab that for the extra damage. And I decide to actually throw Timbersaw into the right lane here. I think, you know what? Maybe he stalls out by putting everything into the first lane. At which point I'm just going to start pressuring that 3rd lane. There's no way he can kill 2 towers like that. But for some absurd reason, he throws everything into that final lane. I assume he's hoping for 1 last Roar. But there's nothing in front of Sven anyway, so he'd need a Roar and he'd need a New Orders. And I think this is just about when I get him. I can't remember, yeah, so he Potions of Knowledge. Well, okay, I'll Potion of Knowledge as well. Now I have a stun, so as soon as he does anything, there we go, boom. He does still have an item, but he only spent 3 gold on it, so I assumed it was some sort of potion. And I assumed rightly, because he submits. So there is one of the games of Call to Arms. These decks are actually really interesting. There's very little to decide which deck particularly beats which. There are some that obviously have advantages over others, but all in all, it's really fun to play. I've been playing a shed load of it, and I can't wait for you guys to get your hands on it, so you can join me in this event. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, feel free to hit like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out. And I've been Divok of the Artificers Guild, and I'll see you next time.